Welcome to Sheepdog Nation podcast, the only place on the internet where law enforcement and their families can come to be understood, supported, and stood up for. Here's your host, the always entertaining, down-to-earth, yet in-your-face truth speaker and Leo herself, Autumn Schmidt.
Sheepdog Nation, wow. Do I have a treat for you. This interview today is with Mark Devine. He is the author of The Unbeatable Mind, the founder of SEAL Fit. He's a former Navy SEAL. He retired as the commander. He holds 2 black belts in the martial arts. He's also a yoga instructor. He is a professor in leadership, and he's also an entrepreneur and runs multiple successful businesses, and recently just broke a world record. His team did for the most burpees in a 24-hour period. It was 6 people, and you'll hear in this episode how many burpees Mark himself did. I cannot wait for you to dive in. This is going to be an episode to listen and re-listen to and take notes. I'm telling you right now, so much good stuff in this interview. I'm so excited for you. And without further ado, enjoy. Hi, Mark. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Autumn. First, thanks for having me on the show.
We are thrilled.
I like talking to sheepdogs. Some of my favorite people in the world. You know?
Yes, probably because you have led many, and I cannot wait to dive in and tell everybody all about you. And oh my goodness, I was just looking at your biography, and everything you've accomplished and what you've done is just absolutely amazing. So I
appreciate that. I'll keep it simple. I'm, basically spent 20 years in the SEAL teams as an officer, retired as a commander, 2011. But prior to that, I was actually in business. So I was a CPA down on Wall Street and getting my MBA at NYU. So that was kind of an interesting U-turn that I did. That's a fun story, in and of itself. I wrote about that in a book I have that I wrote called The Way of the SEAL. So I tell about how I was essentially, on this one path, living this one story to be in business. And all of a sudden I started meditating through Zen. I was fortunate enough to find a Zen master masquerading as a karate instructor, Mr. Tadashi Nakamura, who became my first meditation teacher. And that process cracked me wide open and showed me, my purpose, my dharma, my calling in life. And that was to be a warrior and a teacher. So that defined the rest of my life. Really profound. And I felt very humbled and fortunate to have that experience at 23 instead of at 43 or 53.
Absolutely.
Before the midlife crisis, sets in.
Yeah.
So, but as far as the SEAL team experience, it was awesome, just like everyone would imagine. So really, really cool. It was definitely, most of it was pre-war, era. I actually got off active duty and went into reserves around 97. Mm-hmm. And then I got mobilized in 2000. Then I got mobilized again in 2004 to go to Iraq. But about 10 years of my experience was active duty, 45 different countries around the world, leading teams and doing different kinds of missions, but only one tour in Iraq. Mm-hmm. I contrast that, and I say it only because, since 9/11, many of my peers have done multiple combat tours with hundreds and hundreds of just gnarly missions. And it was never my path to do that, so I have combat under my belt, but not like that. But everyone's got their own path. And so mine was to be a teacher. When I got off active duty and started in business, my first business was a brew pub in Coronado, California, called the Coronado Brewing Company.
That is awesome.
Still cranking away today. It's a very successful company. I'm no longer involved. I sold my interest to my partners. We had a little falling out, so I decided it was best to just move on and to do something where I could be, not in a fight mode. Mm-hmm. So I launched my business SEAL Fit back in 2006 to train SEAL candidates using techniques that I had learned through Nakamura and then through a lot of trial and error, through yoga, an integration of East and West, and just like my own training regimen, which I used in combat with great effect. Yeah. I called it Warrior Yoga at the time. And I put together this program called SEAL Fit to help SEALs become great leaders. And it was pretty extraordinary. So the training I was giving to them was a lot of the stuff I write about in my book, Unbeatable Mind. It was breath control work, concentration training, visualization, how to really stay present and ask good questions in the midst of, really shitty situations.
Yeah.
Just clarity, good decision making, visually, all that tied together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, and the SEALs that I trained, or the SEAL candidates I trained, all of them were getting through BUD. So we have 90% success rate. And
compared to like what's it typically?
85% fail rate for the average person.
Holy shit.
So for example, my SEAL training class 170, we had 185 students and 19 of us graduated.
Unreal.
And I graduated as the honor man of my class, and I was using tools that I had learned from my martial arts training with Nakamura, or through, I would say, more my Zen training. Because as you know, as a martial artist, most martial arts don't have the deep meditative practices.
100%.
Lost.
It is lost.
So I was very fortunate to have that, but it was also optional, and not many of the students did it, right? Of a studio that Nakamura had with, maybe 300 or 400 students, which is pretty big. Maybe 15 of us took on the meditation classes, which he held every Thursday night for an hour. And then he would take a small group of us up to the Zen Mountain Monastery in Woodstock, New York, twice a year for these 4-day retreats. It was extraordinary. Such a neat experience to have in my 20s, early 20s.
What a foundation. Yeah,
it was very, very cool. So anyways, those tools, my ability to concentrate and to control my physiology through my breath, and to literally to clarify my mind and to make good decisions under pressure, and to maintain a positive attitude, some of it was self-developed, but a lot of it came, through the training and through the insights of meditation. But it allowed me to just dominate my SEAL training. And I thought to myself later on, wow, other teams, other candidates, other people could really benefit from this, because it has such an application for performance. But even more importantly, Autumn, it also has an application for really accessing deep potential and clarifying really important things about your life. Like, who are you and why are you on this planet, and what are you going to do about it?
Yes. The
most important stuff, right? And so I made it my life's mission to train 100 million people by 2045 in these principles that I call Unbeatable Mind. And I started it with SEAL candidates, and then to all military SOF and Spec Ops. We've done a lot of first responders and obviously law enforcement, and a lot of executives. And now we're getting into corporate training. It's just been a really cool journey,
I bet you are. And that's the thing, Mark. And I just want to say this, and I want my listeners to hear this, is like, the reason, I know my husband and I just absolutely love you. Your book is a staple in our house. It is read at least 2 times a year at very minimum. We have it on Kindle. I have it on my Audible. I have it everywhere.
That's awesome.
Because, and here's what I really want, this is what I want Sheepdog Nation to take from this is, being an elite in whatever you are is so much more than just physical. And it's, it's so much more than just sitting there and because you talk about mindset, and you always, what I love about your book and, your SEAL Fit training we're going to talk about in a few minutes, is how you really encourage people, the most masculine, type A people in the world, to really go within and really, focus within. And it's the meditation, and it's that kind of mindset that for police officers, it is not, we don't talk about that. In the academy, it's tactical breathing.
Right. And tactical breathing is good for, obviously it's very beneficial.
Right.
But to me, it's a practice. So tactical breathing shouldn't be something that you have to remember to do in a firefight. It should be your normal breathing pattern, which is slow and steady, 4 or 5 count in, 4 or 5 count out. And you practice that every day, in the morning and even in the evening or in downtime. And it's the practice that bleeds off stress and has the effect on your mind. It's not just a once in a while remembering to tactical breathe. Tactical breathing doesn't really have any effect on your ability to concentrate and focus and make better decisions, except that it slows your heart rate down and gives you a little bit more space. It's the daily practice, like I said, which will transform the individual sheepdog into a more aware sheepdog, someone who's more connected, who's able to tap into their intuitive and really feel into a situation, and to use your whole body as a mind, which is so critical for anyone who has a career in a dangerous situation. When I was in the SEALs, we used our whole body as a mind. Every signal, every sensation, every image that we got, every smell, every feeling, it was all important information. And we got really good at assessing what it meant. And boy, did it keep us out of a lot of shit. So that's what I'm talking about, and the breathing practice, box breathing, is the way in, right? The breath is the bridge, the link between the body, the mind, and ultimately your spirit. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so profound. And, I like to say when I train military and spec ops and sheepdogs, that meditating, breathing, visualizing, all these inner practices, developing your mind, it makes you significantly stronger, but in ways you can't, it's not obvious on the outside. Lifting weights and, doing the tactical drills makes you better at performing those specific skills, but it's easy to identify results quickly. But if you really, really want to transform yourself into an elite warrior, think about, like in the old days, the Zen master sitting on the bench who can spring into battle or sense the attacker coming up from behind and disarm them. That has to be done in silence. And those practices sitting in silence are not an indicator that you're weak or that you're woo-woo. It actually is an indicator that you're strong. So to use a metaphor, like for an environmental metaphor, you want to be like a mighty oak when it's important to, present that part of yourself, the oak tree, very strong, unbreakable. Yeah. But you want to be like the reed that can blow in the wind when the tsunami comes, because the mighty oak is going to get washed downstream. Yeah. So you want to have both, the ability to project power like the mighty oak, but also be very flexible and supple and even vulnerable, like the reed, so that you can survive long term, so that you can use your intuition, so that you can connect even with, let's say an offender who maybe is being misunderstood. And we see so much problem with police brutality. A lot of that's just because, everything looks like a nail, then the only thing you're going to use is a hammer, right? Right. I said that wrong, but, basically this is what I'm saying is accurate. Every solution looks like a nail, so we're going to use the hammer. Well, maybe not every solution or every person out there is a nail. Some of them are just misunderstood. Some of them in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some of them made a stupid mistake. And so the sheepdog first responders, need to be able to breathe into it and assess the situation at a deeper level and realize this is a human being, and there by the grace of God go I. And, let's just get to the bottom of the situation before pulling a trigger, before clubbing someone over the head, And I know that some people listening to this will be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about because you haven't walked in my shoes. And I'll be like, that's true. But I have trained an awful lot of people who have walked in your shoes. And I was a SEAL, and so it's kind of close enough. Mm-hmm. And you got to have a heart and a fist, right? Mm-hmm. And you got to use them both wisely.
Absolutely. No, hands down. And I love that. And what I love the most, to be honest with you, is that they'll actually listen to you when you say go within and right. Inner work, whereas sometimes when I preach it, but it's somebody.
Well, to be honest, Autumn, that's part of the problem. It's not just that, Navy SEALs saying do this, that helps. Mm-hmm. But it's the way I teach it is it's very simple. This stuff is not hard. I mean, the hard part is the discipline to do it, to do something new. Well, that's just habit. We all know how to, habituate new things. So it's appreciating how valuable it is. It's understanding that this isn't some woo-wee spiritualism, yoga. These tools exist in those other systems, but for good measure, because they're extremely powerful for developing the mind and the body and the spirit. It's just been lost in the West, or never ported over very well. And where it did get ported over, it became stretchy, bendy yoga, which most guys think is cheesy or it's for girls. Or it was taught as kind of like some sort of Hinduistic meditative practice like TM, Transcendental Meditation, which is just basically a concentration practice using a mantra. So I like to take the foo out of the kung fu for these people and just say, like when I was teaching the SEALs, I didn't call it yoga. I said, let's just breathe. And here's why breathing practice will be so powerful for you. It'll make you, be better. Make better decisions under the stress of combat. It'll bleed off excess stress, so you'll physiologically be more balanced and you'll be healthier. Right? You'll be able to concentrate more on your task. You'll be a better teammate because you'll be able to connect and be able to be more empathic or empathetic for your teammates. And they're like, yeah, those are all very useful things. I want those things. I say, okay, here's how we develop them. Right? We're going to use breath training. We're going to use visualization. We're going to develop a mantra to maintain a positive attitude. We're going to really feed the courage wolf. Well, the courage wolf is in your heart. Courage, core means heart. So courage is in your heart. Fear is in your brain. So if you want to stoke your courage, then you got to connect to your heart level with a deep sense of purpose and a deep commitment to your teammate and a deep commitment to your mission. And you have a vision for what that looks like, for what that feels like. And they start to practice all this stuff together and get really task focused on, the smallest components that'll lead to mission success with all those, with their breath and control, with the vision for victory, with the mantra, and they just dominate.
Yeah,
right? They just dominate.
The combination is powerful.
Yes, and they need to be practiced every day. It's not a theoretical construct. It's a practice. Mm-hmm. And so once these guys get it and they start to practice these skills every day, all of a sudden they see their applicability in anything. Life in general, goal accomplishment, career, but also most important when the shit hits the fan and bullets are flying or the tensions are going through the roof, then those skills really, really click in and show their worth under pressure.
Absolutely. And that's what we need. That's perfect. Yeah. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about, do you, off the top of your head, can you think of one of your most stressful situations you've been in, and then how you handled it?
I've been near death more times I can count. When I was in the SEAL teams, they led to, a lot of momentary stress because fear of obviously loss of life does that to you. One example, a couple quick ones. One is a parachute jump where I had a midair collision. Some guy ran into me and he didn't follow procedures and my parachute collapsed. And so now I'm plummeting to the earth. And it was a static line jump, so we were pretty low to the ground already. So 800 feet up, my chute collapsed. I got basically 8 seconds to live. And so untrained and without these skills, I probably would have burned in. But because I was trained, at least in the basic procedures, and I had the skills to be able to, in my mind, slow time down, I was able, that whole experience became a profound experience for me. So I went through the procedures to, yank on the risers to try to get air. Nothing happened. Then I deployed my reserve, shot it out there. That didn't catch any air. But all the while, I slowed my breathing down and I clicked back into my mantra. And I had a vision of myself surviving. All that happened in real time because I've been practicing visualization and breath work and my mantras for so long. And so I just kept doing that in real time, and the whole experience just started to stretch, right? Meaning time started to stretch. And to where, then I went back up and pulling on the riser. It just felt like I had all this time to work the risers and then all this time to work on my reserve to get it inflated and all this, and if you were watching me, I was just barreling to the earth at, 60 miles an hour. I wasn't at terminal velocity yet because we jumped out so low, but it was not a survivable jump. Oh. And so I just kept doing that, knowing that I was going to survive. I had that deep sense of, this is not my time, because I could see myself alive. Mm. And then sure enough, about 200 feet off the ground, I went back to the riser and started yanking them, and they caught enough air that when I hit, and with my perfect parachute landing fall, I literally stood up and dusted myself off and was fine.
Wow.
Profound experience, right? Really cool.
Yeah.
And I wasn't stressed either when I hit the ground. I was breathing deeply and I was like, whew, that was a close one, And then I went off to find the guy who ran into me to punching you.
I bet.
Stuff like that. I had another experience in an SDV, which is a SEAL delivery vehicle, a little mini submarine. I think I wrote about this story, maybe even both of them.
You did. But go ahead.
The SDV story, a lot of people love that. It's really interesting because it wasn't so much life-threatening. It's more like, well, it could easily have been.
Yeah.
I lost my face mask, which is a wraparound thing. It broke. I couldn't find my backup. And so there I was in this SDV in the middle of the ocean, and I was completely useless. Mm-hmm. And so I put a regulator in my mouth because we had backup regulators, and I basically just started box breathing. And the pilot, fortunately, I was the navigator. The pilot took over navigation. He knew I was toast. But I was, I had like 9 or 10 hours. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be brutal. So I started box breathing and going into the mental training that I'd learned. And, it felt like about 45 minutes later, the driver taps me and says, we're here at the objective. And 4 hours had gone by, but it was just like, I just went into such a deep flow state that it felt like 45 minutes to me. And it was another like really, really peaceful moment. But here I am in a seriously dangerous situation, underwater, in the dark, on a mission. And there's so many experiences like that. I had a friend who was at Tora Bora, where the CIA officer Nicky Spain was being held. They thought he was alive. This is in Afghanistan in the early days. And he was there with some special forces guys, and they were going to go in and get Nicky. And so he starts leapfrogging. They come under heavy fire, right? Pins down the team. So the Green Berets, nothing against these guys, but they were just pinned down. Well, this guy, he had some of the skills that I was talking about, and because he was a martial artist. And so he started to, go into this state again. And he could literally just see things happen before they happen. And he knew, so it helped kind of guide his movements. So he would shoot and move, and he just knew, like he had this deep sense of knowingness that there was nothing that was going to hit him that day. Nothing was going to touch him. And time slowed down for him as well. And he was able to just navigate his way in there. All these other guys are pinned down, and he's just like walking through the gunfire, just like you see in the movie, you know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
Nothing could hit him because he could see it. He could see the actions that the enemy was taking literally before or, in this time warp, so that he was able to move before, their bullets would be able to find their mark. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
These experiences taught me that, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye, in this experience of being human. And that when we begin to train our mind, it's almost like we're tapping into at the quantum level, like in the Matrix, we begin to be able to manipulate time and energy and to use it to our advantage in a positive way. So if you're a sheepdog, this is what these skills will give you. And it's not like superstition or weird science. It's just very real. And once you start to train every day with these skills, then the experiences start to validate what I just said.
Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Now, let me ask you this. So as you know, I'm sure you know, obviously Sheepdog Nation, we tend to have a pretty high like PTSD rate. Yeah. What do you think? Because stress obviously is a big factor of that, like our experiences and stuff. Like, what do you think? Like, how do you like? What can you tell us? Like one thing that you've done. I know it's a combination, but if you could pick like one thing for Sheepdog Nation to do and focus on to really help kind of combat that, like after these stressful situations like you've been in.
Sure. There's a couple things that I would like to talk about here. One is the breathing. The most important practice that a healthy individual and someone who's dealing with extreme stress can do every day is box breathing. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold every morning. And that's a daily practice. That's your meditation, right? It precedes meditation, but you can't meditate unless you do the breathing. It bleeds off stress. It detoxifies kind of your mind, meaning gets rid of dysfunctional mental patterns, mental movements. It's extraordinarily important. It's a prerequisite for any type of real serious mental work like visualization or meditation. Okay. That is the number one thing. So anybody who practices box breathing every day, when they go into a stressful situation like a firefight, they're going to be much calmer. and they'll click into that tactical breathing a lot quicker, like I said, automatically. Plus, they'll be able to manage time better, like I said, in the mental state, because box breathing really is a flow trigger. It helps you access a flow state really quickly because your mind can be in kind of that high alpha, low beta state instead of just jacking up to gamma, where everything starts to speed up. You keep everything slow while the world speeds up around you. You're still slow. It's like slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so that's the most important. And it's an action. It's a physical action that everyone can do. It's not weird. It's literally the most basic thing you do as a human is breathe. Well, you're just taking conscious control over that breathing and slowing it down and practicing it every day. And you're practicing it in a nice, calm space so your mind isn't distracted. You're not practicing it while you're texting or watching TV. You're just practicing it sitting alone and just focusing, concentrating on the practice itself. That's number one. When I found working with military with post-traumatic stress, typically it's like far removed from the stress and often caused by two things. Well, three really. One, some sort of moral outrage, right? Because in combat or in sheepdog situations, you do things that you just think are morally repugnant. And then you have difficulty kind of rationalizing that away. And so people feel guilt or shame. And guilt and shame are just insidious, cancers, moral cancers. And so that is one of the big causes of PT, post-traumatic stress, I think. And it's not spoken about very often. It's one of the things we're working on the Courage Foundation is to bring people these physiological tools, but also the psychological tools. And I'm not saying therapy because that's important too, but to understand that what they did wasn't their fault and that it was just just happens. It comes with a package of being a sheepdog and to overcome the shame and guilt associated with that. The second thing is a lot of times, like especially in the military, it's, the PTS shows up after they're done with the mission, meaning like when they get out of the military. Right. And that's because all of a sudden they've lost their mission. They don't know what their purpose is anymore. And so you see a lot of sheepdog first responders and police officers who may have gotten into a situation which all of a sudden now they're benched, or like you got injured in your back and you got benched. Right. And you're like, well, I loved serving, on the front lines. That's why I did this. But now I'm sitting, behind a keyboard or I just don't know why I'm doing this anymore. And so the loss of clarity around my mission and the purpose starts to eat away at them as well. So they need to find purpose again, find meaning, right, around what they're doing. You're finding it through the Sheepdog podcast, right? Yeah. And the third is the team, right? The military man or woman loses their team when they leave the mission. Or if there's a major situation or incident which causes all that stress, like they get blown up or something, or there's something outrageous that happens, usually they're off the team and there's either an inquiry or they're just injured and they just can't continue. And so all of a sudden you lose your best friends and your teammates. And team like that is more than friendship. It's a bond that goes deeper than family. It's a different kind of bond that you can't even put words on, around.
Fully agree.
So if you could bring these elements back together, if you give the affected individual affected with post-traumatic stress the tools to manage and bleed off the stress, breathing, visualization, mindful movement, like yoga or Tai Chi, or even like burpees, done with breath and a mantra will do the trick. And get them back together with a team that shares their suffering, but also can share hope. Working on the moral outrage so they overcome the regret and the shame and guilt associated with whatever actions happened to them or they took, and perpetrated on other people in the line of duty, so to speak. And giving them some sort of purpose or helping them find purpose and a new mission. To me, those four things right there will do the trick. Now, of course, the VA system is doing nothing but pumping the military up with drugs that make them worse. And I'm not sure what kind of support structures there are in law enforcement, but my sense is it's not much better.
No, it's not. And what you just said is That's huge. It's absolutely huge. And that's huge for us to think about and how to move forward. And it's massive. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And like, especially like from my experience of, I got diagnosed with PTSD, and like everything that you just said was like just so true. It's like, wow. Yeah. So thank you for that.
I started a foundation 2 years or 3 years ago because of this issue, and I wanted to help vets because it didn't seem like the military or the VA could really help them. And 22 veterans a day are committing suicide.
And did you know that? I do know that. And thank you for sharing that statistic. But I can tell you that law enforcement is creeping up, and if not, has surpassed that. It's like,
oh my gosh, no.
It's crazy. The last year we lost more officers to suicide than we did to the versus like in the line of duty deaths. And I'm not sure about the military, Mark, but I can tell you with law enforcement, they don't talk about it. It is not talked about.
That's bullshit. Yeah. The military doesn't talk about it either. Because once they're out, they're out. The military is focused on fighting the next war. Right. They're not focused on healing the warriors. So, here's what I think, Autumn, is that when the system fails the individuals, then it's time for other individuals to pick up the slack. Yeah. So, we see problems all over the world that are indicators that our old systems aren't working. They're not up to snuff. Our government's not up to snuff anymore. Because it can't. The world's changing too fast. This is one area, where that we know we have the knowledge to be able to serve and to help people with post-traumatic stress and to prevent, to intervene at the moment of crisis or to give them support so they don't commit suicide, at least then. And then, you make that one decision to not do it. And then the very next day, your life changes because all of a sudden you realize how close you came. And you're ready for recovery, but then where do you go, right? So,
what do you do?
The way I look at it is like it's time for individuals like you and I and everyone else listening. It's time for us to step up. It's our time. It's our time to be our own like self-appointed government. And I'm not talking about that in a political sense, like take over the government. No, I'm saying let's step up and fill the gap because obviously the government can't, and frankly, it's completely broke. Who knows how long it's going to even last in this form?
I know.
Because we're so utterly broken in debt. So it's not working. So let's individuals and through nonprofits and through back to communities and families and let's think differently about how to solve some of these intractable problems.
100%. And thank you so much because you're literally reiterating like what I talk about every single day. So it's nice to hear that. Mark, you talked about so let's talk about this. I heard that you recently actually just broke a world record.
Right.
And so I'd like to talk about that with you. And is that the foundation? It's the Courage?
Sure. So the Courage Foundation, last year, we took some vets to Greece and we walked 240 miles in 7 days with 2 half marathons thrown in on the Spartan Trail. The King Leonidas took us 300 Spartans, from Sparta to Thermopylae to ward off the Persian invasion of these hundreds of thousands of warriors. Everyone knows about that story who's listening, of course. It's in the movie 300. It's just very inspiring for warriors like us. Yeah. Anyway, so I took vets out there, but I couldn't really serve more than 4 vets, because it was expensive and big deal. So I was thinking, what can I do this year where more people could participate? And while I was thinking about this last December, I had just so happened to have challenged myself to do 200 burpees a day just for the heck of it. It's like holidays, it's going to be a lot of partying, a lot of distraction. Maybe I'll do something that's going to be kind of like a little bit hard, requires a commitment, just to keep me focused through the holidays and just to prove to myself. So I was doing 200 burpees a day. And by the time I got to the end of the month and I was thinking about my goals for next year, I was still doing burpees and I felt really good and I didn't want to stop. And then it dawned on me is like, everybody can do burpees. Everybody. They're the no excuse exercise. Now, not many people do them because they hurt. There's a little bit of pain associated with the burpee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To throw yourself on the floor, do a push-up and jump back up and clap. That's a long range of motion and there's a lot of energy output. So anyways, I had this audacious idea because I knew that 22 vets a day were committing suicide. I said, what if we suffered? What if I asked my tribe to suffer? An uncommon amount and to raise money and awareness for these vets. So what if we do 22 million burpees in 2018? I did the math and I'm like, holy shit, can we even do that? I said, yeah, we can. I can do 100,000 burpees. That means 300 a day. If I do 300 a day, I'll hit 100,000. And I bet you I can find 221 other guys or women who would do 100,000 burpees with me next year. So I put the challenge out to my tribe.
Yeah.
I didn't get 221 to do 100,000, but I did get close to 200 to do some number.
Yeah.
Some 100,000, some 50, some 75.
Yeah.
And so we said 3, 2, 1, go. January 1st, we started. And so I'm at 97,500 right now. So I'll be done in 6 or 8 days. I'm going to do my last set of burpees at my annual summit, which is coming up in a few weeks in Carlsbad. But anyway, so the story doesn't end there. So the commitments that I had from everyone got us to about 14 or 15 million burpees. And we've already raised $200,000. And with that money, we're going to put as many vets as we can. It's going to be like 30 or 40 through a 3-day immersive experience to teach them those skills that we talked about. And then we're going to hook them up into a team with a coach, a certified coach, for 18 months to work on all the rest of the stuff, the team, the purpose, and overcoming any kind of moral injury. So what we found is not everyone could do the daily commitment thing. It just wasn't right for them. For me, it was very inspiring. To have a big why and to get up every day and to do my 300 burpees was awesome, but it wasn't for everyone. And also we had some teams and groups that wanted to participate. And so we said, well, let's expand this concept a little bit. You can do it burpees however is appropriate for you. It could be, could you be just coming together as a team and doing as many as you can in an hour or 2 hours? It could be some other thing. And so we had a high school come together and do Campanile High School in California. They did 4 hours of burpees with their football team, and they raised $6,000.
Unreal.
It's cool. We had Google employees come together and do a SEAL Fit event and do a bunch of burpees, and they donated like $25,000 or $30,000.
Wow.
I had one of my clients bring me back to do a speech at this big Swiss bank called UBS, and they donated, $20,000.
Wow.
And then the biggest initiative was Veterans Day. Now we're recording this on Veterans Day. I know it probably won't be played on Veterans Day, but we're recording on Veterans Day. So this weekend, we invited as many people who could to join us to do 24 hours of nonstop burpees.
Yeah.
While we were thinking about this event, we researched and we found out there was actually a world record for the most number of burpees done by a 6-person mixed team, men and women. And so I told my executive director at the foundation, Courage Foundation, I said, dude, let's do that. We can do that. Like, I think we can crush that. Mm-hmm. So I put together a team. One of the guys is a law enforcement stud, CrossFit stud named Greg Amundsen. So Greg joined. And then my stepdaughter, Catherine, who's been doing burpees with me every day since January and is our yoga teacher. She joined us. And Melanie, who's one of my SEAL Fit coaches, joined us. And Jim, so we had 6 just awesome people. And Liz from Australia, who's a yoga teacher, massage therapist, but it's just this burpee queen. And so we put a strategy together. The strategy was like relentless. Like we were just relentless with our burpees, doing about, anywhere between 25 and 30 a minute between the 6 of us. And only one person can work at a time, right? So that's like the nuance with this world record. Only one person can work at a time.
Wow.
And we did 35,393 burpees in 24 hours.
That's unreal. That's
Isn't
awesome.
that unreal? I'm still having trouble wrapping. I'm like, holy cow. And I was there for every single one of them. I think personally I did over 6,000, close to 7,000.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And the original record was 14,000. And we did 35,000 burpees.
Unbelievable.
And you know what? It wasn't so much about the world record. Like, who cares, right? I mean, it's still got to be validated and everything, which it will be. But it wasn't about that. It was about having a rallying cry, for vets and having everyone understand, like, this is a serious issue and we're willing to suffer, by doing like, not just staying awake and doing a few burpees, but like this intense amount of effort through 24 hours. Greg Amundsen turned to me like, this guy is like a massive stud, like unbelievable stud. They call him the original fire breather in CrossFit, and he's written a book on fitness, and he's just a stud. Former law enforcement, former DEA. He turned to me at the end and he goes, Mark, he goes, I've done some hard things in my life, but I got to tell you, this is by far the hardest thing I have ever done. You know what I mean?
Imagine, yeah.
To include the 50-hour awake thing we do with Kokoro Camp, he did that. He thought that was the hardest thing. No, this is the hardest because it was intense, sustained effort for 24 hours with just very, very short periods of break to quickly recover. We used all the fueling tricks we knew. We used all the recovery tricks we knew.
I bet you did.
It was just awesome. And again, all of that to raise, and we raised, I don't know the numbers yet, but I'm willing to bet we raised about $25,000 just on that day.
Unbelievable. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for doing that and, helping our vets. That's huge, massive.
Yeah, we're doing what we can, but we know it's not enough. So everyone can help out. Let's just say, whether it's helping us or doing things in your own communities, this is for both, law enforcement and military. It's critical, as you know.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Just a couple other questions I have because I know you've got to go, but I just wanted to ask you if you had a short answer for this on what brought you to writing your book, because your book, The Unbeatable Mind, every person listening to this needs to go get. Sheepdog Nation, you're gonna have a link below. There's an Audible link. You can go sign up for free on Audible for a free trial, and you can actually get it. And I'll have Mark's website right below, so you can go to the website and check it out. But that book is, I think I told you guys, but it's really changed my husband and I's life. I think every law enforcement officer, first responder needs to read it or listen to it. But Mark, I'd just love to hear how that came about for you.
It's a good story. I mentioned earlier, first of all, that I've been training this way since I was in my 20s. And so, I've really had a lot of personal dirt dive time, with my mind, with the mental training and emotional development, trying to understand how it all worked in my life so I can be more effective. And it has led me to be very successful in certain areas, but it was never really about the success. It was about the becoming, right? The being part, like I mentioned earlier. And so when I started SEAL Fit and I started teaching SEALs, I was so inspired by my martial arts training with Nakamura, in particular, the Zen Mountain Monastery sessions where we would literally train karate for 3 hours straight, take a break, and then sit in meditation for an hour and a half, right? Then eat lunch with the monks in silence, and then train karate for another 3 hours, and then take a break, and then go for a run, and then meditate for another hour and a half. It was an incredible experience. So I wanted to recreate that warrior monk experience for these SEAL candidates. So I created what I call the SEAL Fit Academy. And I had this beautiful training center. I don't have it anymore because I kind of gave it up because our business model went in a different direction. But I had this beautiful facility in Encinitas, California, and I had an apartment, and I could put 8 people up in this apartment, I figured. And so I invited, I put a notice out to my tribe, and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. First time ever, I'm going to run the SEAL Fit Academy. It's going to be 30 days of live-in. You come live with me, and myself and some of my coaches will train you for 30 days straight. You'll have some very long days, sometimes around the clock, but I can guarantee you when you come out of this, you will be transformed. And whatever your goals are, if you're going into, to get through BUDS or, Q course, you'll dominate. I had 4 people sign up for that first course. I charged $3,000. And during that first course, it became apparent to me that all the tools, because let me back up. The physical training, I pretty much figured that out pretty quickly. I already developed the SEAL Fit operator workouts. The 8 Weeks of SEAL Fit book was kind of partially written. I had it written as a manual form. So I knew how to do all the physical training. I knew how to teach the SEAL type physical, mental training through log PT and long ruck marches and ocean swims, and then all the weightlifting and PT and functional fitness and CrossFit. And I could do all that, and I had support doing all that. But, that was about maybe a half of the day. And the other half I needed to fill up with leadership skills and team building skills and mental toughness and resiliency. And so it was that second part of developing all the character of being a kick-ass, sheepdog, that I had to develop from scratch. And so I began to just test things that I'd used myself or I'd learned throughout my 30 years as a martial artist. And then by then I had been studying and teaching yoga for about 10 years. And of course I'm a voracious reader, and I've been 20-year Navy SEAL and, a couple black belts. And so I had all these tools to draw from. And I was like, what will work with these kids? Mm. And I also learned that I can't teach it the way I was taught. Mm. Because the way I was taught was either with a Japanese, cloak or gi wrapped around it, or a yoga kind of spiritualistic approach, or whatever, Tao, the Tao Te Ching. None of these things are culturally relevant to Westerners, and people just like, that's not for me. And so I just took, like I said earlier, I took the foo out of the kung fu. I stripped all that stuff out and began to just test what would work and what didn't work, and create a whole new kind of like methodology around how do you teach someone to do these basic fundamental skills, which have never really been taught to us, but should be taught to all kids and all adults, right? So how do you control the breathing, and why, and how do you visualize, and why, and for what effect, and what are the different types of visualization, and what's the power of a mantra, and why, why does it work, and why do certain words have a certain effect and other words have a different effect? How to be aware of the power of negative emotions versus positive emotions. How do you transform your emotions so that they're positive and able to have the powerful effect? How do you communicate with heart? You know what I mean? Where you're connecting deeply at someone, where you're literally dropping your mind into your heart. These are all I think they're rudimentary skills that everyone needs to know. So I started to teach them and developed a program that I called Unbeatable Mind before I wrote the book. And then I was like, this stuff I had people come to me, Autumn, and say, listen, I love what you're doing. There's no way I can take 30 days off, nor am I physically strong enough to do that program. But I really I've heard you talk. I've seen some of your videos, trickling around on YouTube, because we put out little snippets here and there. I really want to experience this training that you're calling Unbeatable Mind. So I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So I created an online training program, a 12-month online training program. And guess what? The book Unbeatable Mind was you got it with the first lesson. It was basically the manual. But because it was self-published, I put it out as a manual, and then I looked at that book. Everyone said they loved it. And then I got, I was like, if this is actually going to get read by people, I better turn this into a real book. So I rewrote the entire thing to the version that you have now, and self-published it. And I put a lot of love into that book, and I'm still not happy with with it, and I'm about ready to upgrade it again. But also I'm writing kind of like the 2.0 version for millennials, or for anyone kind of like trying to strike out on a new path, and how to overcome, really how to overcome fear, how to deal with, how to develop clarity, how to connect with your witness so that you can gain information from your deepest, essential nature, how to do the self-emotional development, that I call recapitulation. So I go really deep into the recapitulation practice, how to develop the right habits, and create processes instead of just goals. It's really, really excited about this book that'll be out in March. I'm calling it Uncommon.
Uncommon. I love it. Well, I can't wait, because I'll be scooping that up immediately. That's awesome.
That's sweet.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So my last question to you, Marcus, do you have any advice for rookies coming into this job? Like, what's the one thing that you would tell them coming into Sheepdog Nation?
I would tell them to keep your mouth shut and to listen. Don't speak unless what you say is technically accurate, useful, going to add to the conversation, and it's coming from a place of care and concern. Too many rookies, or too many young people or new people open their mouth and try to prove themselves when really what they need to do is just, be humble and quiet and just prove that they're able to work their asses off and be a good teammate. Just season a bit. Right? You don't have to be the number one on the force, or you don't have to prove anything to anybody, right? You just need to do your job and to be a good teammate and to keep your head on your shoulders.
That's It's a great advice. A lieutenant, right before I started FTO, a lieutenant pulled me aside one day and was like, listen, I'm going to give you some advice. You haven't started FTO yet, so you haven't started ruining your reputation. So he goes, what you need to do is you need to never say, I know. You're on FTO. You are a rookie. You know nothing. You always just say, okay, I got it.
Got it. Check. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
In line with what you said, but and so Mark, how can you tell everyone how can they get in contact with you? Because after this episode, I'm sure they're going to want to.
Yeah. So of course, we have some social media at Unbeatable Mind and SealFit. That's kind of fun. My personal website is markdevine.com. If someone is interested in my books, of course, they're on Amazon. Someone wants to send me, some information, they can do it by sending a note to info@sealfit.com.
Okay.
And, we're here to help answer any questions about our training. Our SealFit training is really valuable for sheepdogs. In fact, we have an event called Sheepdog Awareness and some self-defense training that is based upon Sansu Kung Fu, which is what I did in the SEALs. It's very helpful. It's not on the schedule for next year yet, but it will be. And then our 50-hour coral camps are really powerful for developing greater awareness and, expanding your sense of, your field of vision, so to speak, and your resiliency. And Unbeatable Mind, of course, is an amazing program. So we love to do trainings with units and with organizations, or people can participate just by doing the online training or coming to our public event, which is a 3-day academy. We have 2 of those next year. So lots of stuff going on.
Awesome. And that was one thing I wanted to ask you was, so is the Unbeatable Mind program, is that online? Yeah,
we have an online program, 12 months long, called Unbeatable Mind Online. And then we have a 3-day academy experience where we go into all the principles and all the training in depth. We also have something called the Summit, which this year is going to be the last year we run it, but that's coming up on November 29th and December 3rd in Carlsbad. We have some slots left with that. All that information is at the unbeatablemind.com website.
Okay, because I'll put all that. So in the show notes, we'll have all of your links so that everybody can.
Sweet.
Thank
you.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for being here. Really super appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Autumn. Thanks for doing what you're doing. And to everyone out there who's on the front lines, stay focused and box breathe every day. Trust me, it'll make a big difference.
Yes, box breathing. All right, Sheepdog Nation, you heard it here from Mark Devine. You better be box breathing. He told you exactly how to do it. And below in the show notes, you're going to be able to get in contact with Mark. I'm going to leave his book. I'm going to leave all of his websites and his email. So you can email info@sealfit.com. I'm really excited about it. And I will.
By the way, Autumn, we do have an app for box breathing at Unbeatable. If you search the App Store for Unbeatable Mind Box Breathing, we have an app and you can get a black belt in box breathing. It's a really nice, handy tool because it'll remind you and you can follow along, and it has a sound, like inhale, exhale, stuff like that.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You heard that, Sheepdog Nation. We have a box breathing app that I think we all need to get on, especially, when we're on duty and just starting shift. That would be probably perfect.
Huge.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Autumn.
And that was another episode of Sheepdog Nation. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes and let us know by giving us a rating. If you have questions that you want answered by Autumn in the podcast, submit it by going to the link in the show notes. As always, stay safe and watch your six.